Lloyd was an orphan who ended up being adopted by the strongest S-rank wizard and later became an adventurer, yet his party dismissed him because they thought he was a useless support mage. Still, no one aside from his teacher is aware that he is actually the chosen hero destined to defeat the Demon King. When Lloyd was a child, his hometown was destroyed in the Demon King's assault. He survived, and an S-rank adventurer wizard named Merlin discovered him. She also seemed to have lost someone important during her battle with the Demon King. To cope with her grief, she chose to adopt Lloyd and take him in as her disciple. Merlin brought him to her home, and the very first thing she did was conjure a fireball out of thin air. She informed the startled Lloyd that if he couldn't produce fire with magic by evening, he wouldn't get dinner. Lloyd kept working hard to make flames, and once he succeeded, he eagerly ran to show his teacher. Merlin sarcastically told him he did well before extinguishing his tiny flame and then roasting him medium rare, saying he still had a long journey ahead. Right after that, she demonstrated how to summon water from the ground, and Lloyd nailed it on his first attempt. But instead of praising him, Merlin acted sarcastic again and drowned him in water to show how it should really be done. As days passed, Lloyd learned different types of magic. But Merlin was never pleased. Even when he sculpted her out of ice, she used magic to teach him another lesson. She controlled the sculpture and seized Lloyd before enlarging the statue, reminding him that he lacked skill. She then shattered the sculpture, dropping Lloyd to the floor. Being the naive boy he was, he believed everything Merlin said and promised to work hard to overcome his supposed lack of talent. A few days later, Merlin suffered a terrible hangover, and Lloyd used magic to heal her. The first thing she did after recovering was hug him and thank him. But in the very next moment, she dragged him outside for magic training. Time moved on, and one night Merlin was reading ancient texts with a troubled, painful look on her face. Suddenly Lloyd arrived to call her for dinner, and as she stood up she accidentally dropped the book. Lloyd helped her pick it up, but as soon as he touched it, all the knowledge inside transferred into his mind and he fainted. Merlin panicked, realizing that Lloyd had absorbed an ancient magic spell just by touching the book, proving that he possessed the qualities of the Chosen One. That triggered traumatic memories for Merlin. She didn't want Lloyd repeating the same mistakes she once made. So that night, while Lloyd slept peacefully, Merlin entered his room and placed a magic spell on his forehead with a kiss, sealing the ancient knowledge inside his mind because she didn't want him relying too heavily on his power. To ensure Lloyd never ventured down a dangerous path, she even advised him to become a white mage whose primary role was to support other adventurers. She taught him recovery magic that could help fruit grow and then demonstrated their difference in strength by casually reviving a dying tree. After that, Merlin continued to teach him magic and everything else. But whenever anything involving ancient magic appeared, she told him he didn't need to learn it because ancient magic had vanished hundreds of years ago. Time went on as Lloyd trained under Merlin. And one day, she blindfolded him and led him deep into a forest filled with dangerous monsters. She handed him only a single knife and told him to make it back home within a week using his magic. She didn't give him a chance to respond and ran off. Lloyd was left scared and confused. Almost immediately, a wolf monster appeared, and Lloyd somehow dodged its attacks by climbing up a nearby tree. He realized the white mage spells he knew couldn't defeat monsters, and all he could do was walk home while avoiding danger. First, he used his magical senses to locate his house and started moving in that direction. He used magic to ripen fruits to eat. And at night, he worked on creating new spells that could keep him safe. He continued his dangerous journey alone, experimenting with spells to help him find food and run faster. The next day, he was nearly eaten by a spider monster, but thanks to his speed spell, he managed to escape unharmed. Lloyd didn't stop using that speed spell until he reached home, and as a result, he collapsed from exhaustion at the doorstep. Time flew by, and Lloyd grew into a teenager who became curious about the outside world after finding a magazine about a nearby city. Merlin's behavior also changed. Instead of dragging him to train, she pulled him away from household chores to invent new magic spells. She came up with ideas at completely random times and forced him to pull consecutive all-nighters to help turn those ideas into reality. Lloyd couldn't handle the pressure, and one night, he decided to run away to explore the world. The following morning, Merlin found his room empty with only the city magazine on the desk, and she realized her little boy had finally grown enough to enter a rebellious phase. Meanwhile, Lloyd reached the city and got carried away by its lively atmosphere. He spent the small amount of money he had on food and wondered how to earn more, when a recruitment notice for an adventuring party smacked into his face. He didn't notice that someone had been observing him and chose to try becoming an adventurer. His first mission after joining the party was fighting a cyclops, and he was thrilled because he had never seen anyone battle such strong monsters before. The cyclops pushed back Alan, the party leader and main DPS, and he asked their healer to cast a healing spell on them. Lloyd decided to assist by instantly casting a support spell on everyone in the party, though none of them even noticed. The archer fired an arrow straight into the monster's eye, blinding it. When it tried to strike the archer, the tank named Reena rushed forward to block the blow. She was shocked because she felt almost no force behind the punch. Meanwhile, the party's mage restrained the cyclops, giving Alan the chance to finish it with a single slash. Because of this, Alan became a star overnight, and people began praising him as a hero. Meanwhile, Lloyd was entirely overlooked and received only pocket change for payment because he was just a low-tier white mage. He accepted the amount because he believed that was all he deserved. And when Alan suggested they toast their success, Lloyd quickly excused himself because he didn't drink. The girls were annoyed because he turned down Alan's offer. But Alan didn't actually care, since he didn't consider Lloyd a real member of the party. He claims that all white mages are useless, but the guild requires every party to have one, and it doesn't matter whether it's Lloyd or someone else. Reena, however, believes there is something everyone is overlooking, and she is very curious about Lloyd. Meanwhile, the man observing Lloyd is actually Merlin's informant, and he gives her constant reports about her student. Merlin says she isn't concerned about Lloyd as long as he doesn't become arrogant, and the spy asks her if she regrets what happened in the past. Merlin bites her lip as she remembers the day she fought the Demon Lord alongside her party, which was led by the hero Sybil. The Demon Lord realized he couldn't defeat them, so he chose to self-destruct instead, wiping out an entire city in the explosion. Hero Sybil used ancient magic to revive all the people who died in the Demon Lord's attack, but he had to give up his own life to make it happen. Losing him devastated Merlin. And although she adopted Lloyd as a way to cope, she never imagined he would become a chosen one. Just like with Sybil, she vows never to repeat her mistakes, and she will do whatever is necessary to keep Lloyd safe. Back in the city, Alan quickly rises in reputation after defeating strong monsters thanks to Lloyd's support. Naturally, no one notices this except Reena, who only has a vague sense of what is happening. One night, Alan receives a request from soldiers to take out some golems that are killing their troops near a patrol point. Alan immediately accepts, assuming it will be easy. He leads his party to the patrol site, and Lloyd uses his magic detection to discover they must enter behind the waterfall to reach the golems. Once inside, Alan battles the golems, but a summoner keeps creating more every time one is destroyed. Lloyd notices that the summoner is using a magic stone to produce new golems, so he quickly buffs the archer and tells her to shoot the summoner. She follows his command, and her arrow miraculously curves around a pillar to hit the summoner in the chest. Lloyd then instructs the wizard to teleport the magic staff to him, and he immediately seals it. This annoys Alan, who believes he alone has the right to issue orders to the party. He then chooses to attack the golem directly, and Lloyd wants him to back off because the golem has become unstable after losing its master. Alan ignores him and charges forward, so Lloyd has to use a special spell to catch up and save him from being crushed by the stone giant. Alan becomes furious with him, but right then the golem shuts down, giving Alan the chance to destroy it. After the mission is done, Alan instantly fires Lloyd, insisting he is useless and always hides at the back. Lloyd, who has been manipulated into believing he lacks skill, accepts the decision without resisting. He tries to find another party to join, but none have openings, leaving him discouraged. Fortunately, a girl urgently needs a free white mage, but the receptionist tells her that finding someone who meets her requirements will be difficult. With no other options, the receptionist points toward Lloyd. And the moment the pink-haired girl confirms he is an unemployed white mage, she drags him away with her. It turns out the pink-haired girl, Yui, belongs to an S-rank adventurer party, and they recently went out to hunt bandits. Their teamwork and great strength allowed them to defeat the bandits with ease, and they cornered the boss as well, urging him to surrender. But the boss decided to use his secret move and summoned a massive stone golem to fight them. Yui's party discovered that it resisted magic, and weak physical attacks were ineffective. So Yui chose to face it herself. As the strongest damage dealer in her party, she rushed at the golem and struck it with full power, but she only managed to scratch its surface. She had to retreat and dodge the golem's counterattack. She then asked their party's white mage to buff her. The white mage seemed lost in thought, and it took her a moment to register what Yui had said. Thankfully, she managed to cast the strength-enhancing spell just in time, allowing Yui to defeat the golem with her next strike. After they arrested the bandits, Yui went to speak with the white mage, Clare, who apologized for spacing out earlier because it could have cost Yui her life. Yui told her not to overthink it because she understood Clare was dealing with serious personal issues. She asked how things were at home, and Clare suddenly handed her a resignation letter, explaining that she needed time off to take care of her ill sister. That brings us to the present moment, where Yui eagerly grabs Lloyd's hand and pulls him back to her base. Her party members need a moment to process that she actually found a white mage, as they all believe she would fail. Yui then introduces Lloyd to everyone, even though she doesn't know his name yet. Afterward, she introduces her party to him: Daggers, the shield user, Cross, the archer, and Silica, the mage. Finally, she introduces herself as the swordsman and party leader, welcoming Lloyd to the team. Lloyd asks when he agreed to join, and Yui is startled because she didn't realize she never asked him the essential question. Daggers and Silica understand she dragged a complete stranger in without explaining, and they apologize to Lloyd. Then they face Yui, telling her that even if she found a white mage, he cannot replace Clare and they should abandon their current quest. Yui becomes upset upon hearing this and insists that their client requested their help, and they cannot turn them down. Lloyd asks why they can't let another party take over, and Daggers explains that it is impossible because the quest is A rank. Only parties ranked A or higher can accept it. But since all A-ranked parties are out of town, only their S-rank group can take the mission. Lloyd is stunned to realize he is standing before S-rank adventurers and truly wants to help. But once again his lack of confidence makes him think he is too weak to contribute. However, Yui suddenly speaks up for him, saying the team should at least give Lloyd a chance to demonstrate his abilities before dismissing him. She leads him into the woods to show his skills, and Lloyd becomes nervous, convinced he will disappoint them. Yui keeps urging him to do something, and Daggers asks her to at least specify what spell he should cast since he looks confused. Yui asks Lloyd to cast enchantment magic on all of them. But Cross and Silica doubt he can do it because only very skilled white mages are capable of that. Lloyd is shocked because after all her hype about the job being extremely difficult, Yui has asked him to perform a very basic spell. He asks if she is certain this is the test he needs to pass to join the party, and she confirms it. The other members tell Lloyd he doesn't need to pretend if he can't do it, since they know how hard it is. But Lloyd tells them he will do it. He immediately summons his staff from dimensional storage, which alone astonishes everyone. Then he casts 5 different types of enchantment spells on them simultaneously, and they don't even notice because he is so fast. Yui asks where he pulled the staff from, and he explains the storage spell he uses to store objects. He then asks if she is satisfied with the enchantment results, and Yui becomes confused because normally it requires much more time and a spoken incantation. Everyone begins to feel lighter and stronger thanks to the spells. And to test the effect, Yui swings her sword at a large tree nearby. She manages to slice straight through the tree with ease, even with a light swing, and her entire group is left astonished by it. Lloyd then tells them that he placed 5 different kinds of enchantment spells on them, and they can hardly believe what he is saying. He explains that casting only one spell on everyone felt too simple to count as the real test, so he decided to push beyond that and demonstrate what he is truly capable of. Yui and the others are too shocked to respond, and Lloyd assumes they are disappointed in him. He puts his staff back into storage, saying he understands that he is unsuitable to be the party's white mage. He apologizes for wasting their time and begins to walk away until Yui stops him. She finally decides to ask Lloyd about his past work experience, and he surprises everyone by revealing that he was dismissed from the hero's party for being too weak. Yui and the others wonder what kind of standards the hero must have to label Lloyd as weak, since none of them have ever seen someone cast 5 enchantment spells simultaneously. When Lloyd still insists he is weak, Cross becomes even more concerned about what Lloyd considers normal. Lloyd then shifts the conversation by asking why they don't bring back their original white mage, and Yui explains that Clum's sister is seriously ill, and Clum had been looking after her while still working as an adventurer. Naturally, the strain was too much, and she could no longer manage both responsibilities, so she decided to take a break from adventuring. Doggers comments that they could have completed most quests without her, but A-rank quests are quite difficult, and they absolutely need a white mage for those. Everyone suddenly begins worrying about Clum, because even though she left the party, she is still their friend, and Lloyd feels jealous hearing this. He quickly changes the subject and asks if anyone knows the illness Clum's sister is suffering from. Yui recalls that the girl's body is slowly transforming into magistone, and Lloyd remembers learning about magistones from his master. When Merlin taught him how magistones can also turn living beings into magistone, Lloyd wondered if it might be possible to return them to normal. Now he decides to find the answer. He asks Yui to guide him to Clum's house, and she brings him there. A very thin and exhausted Clum opens the door, surprised to see her friend. Once inside, Lloyd gets straight to the point. He asks Clum to describe her sister's condition in detail, and she explains that originally she and her sister Sylvia used to go on adventures together. But one day she was injured during a mission, and since that time she has been unwell. Lloyd asks for the symptoms, and Clum chooses to show him rather than explain. The moment she opens the door to Sylv's room, an overwhelming malicious mana spills out. Then Clum lifts her sister's blanket, revealing that her hands and legs have already turned into magistone. She explains that Sylvia's mana has gone wild, and her condition worsens every day. Clum fears her sister doesn't have long to live, and Lloyd then asks her to allow him to help. He says he has a theory that might return Sylvia to normal if his assumption is correct. But Clum refuses to trust him because even the expert healer she summoned had declared her sister's condition impossible to cure. Lloyd, however, explains that Sylvia was likely injured by a highly pure magistone, which began converting her into magistone as well. He asks if Sylvia was injured in a place with high mana density, and Clum confirms they had been on a mission to extract a magistone from a cave. Lloyd asks her to show him the wound, and when Clum uncovers Sylv's waist now turned to magistone, he becomes certain this is where the issue began. Clum asks how he knows all of this, and he answers that he learned it from his master. Yui then urges Clum to trust Lloyd this once, and Clum finally agrees to give him a chance. Lloyd immediately casts a spell to absorb the corrupted mana from Sylvia's body, though it is extremely difficult for him to endure. Still, he manages to complete the first stage, telling Clum that he had to reduce Sylvia's mana to almost zero because healing would be pointless otherwise. He says he will continue absorbing her mana while also healing her, and he casts another spell to begin the recovery process. Clum realizes this is not an ordinary healing spell, and Lloyd explains that it is a stronger, highly inefficient version that lets him burn off the mana he is absorbing from Sylvia. Clum is at a loss for words, and Yui asks whether Lloyd is doing something remarkable. She replies that he is casting 2 original spells at the same time while enduring a massive amount of mana, something even the greatest white mages could not handle. Soon, Lloyd's method begins working, returning Sylvia's stone-like body back to normal. As a result, Sylvia regains consciousness, and Clum bursts into tears of joy. Later, she tells Yui and Lloyd that once her sister is fully recovered, they will start going on adventures together again, and she wants Lloyd to support her party while she is away. He tells her he isn't qualified for that, but the remark goes over Clum's head, and she tells him to follow what his heart wants. Afterwards, Yui and the others hold a celebration for Sylvia's recovery, and they thank Lloyd, though he still believes he doesn't deserve it. But seeing how kindly everyone treats him despite just meeting him, he nervously asks if he can join their party, even though he lacks strength. Everyone is pleasantly surprised by his change in attitude and happily welcomes him. After that, they host a welcome party for Lloyd and encourage him to eat as much as he likes because they will pay the bill. Lloyd begins eating as though he has never seen food before, amusing his new party members. They ask if he was really that hungry, and Lloyd tells them that the food in this town is incredibly delicious. This shocks them because the food here is actually quite average. But Lloyd explains that compared to what he has eaten since childhood, the food here has amazing taste. Yui grows curious about his childhood, and Lloyd says he lived with his teacher, who cooked whatever she grew in her garden. Sometimes she gathered wild mushrooms, and other times she roasted wild beast meat without seasoning. Lloyd says that because of that he learned to cook, though he still can't make food as good as this. Yui is no longer interested in food. Instead, she wants to hear more about the person who taught Lloyd magic. She asks him to tell her about his teacher, and the rest of the party joins in. Silica asks if his teacher is also a white mage, but Lloyd says she is more of a combat-type mage because he often saw explosions when she worked alone. Silica is impressed that someone who isn't a white mage trained Lloyd so well, and he agrees that Merlin is beyond incredible. Silica says she would love to learn something from her, but Lloyd immediately warns that she would regret that wish for the rest of her life if she knew the truth. After discussing Merlin a bit more, the group decides to hold a strategy meeting for their mission, and Yui asks Doggers to explain the mission details to Lloyd because she is terrible at presenting things. Doggers tells Lloyd that their task is to defeat monsters destroying local farms. Silica adds that several monster species have grouped together to form a pack. This is the first time Lloyd has heard of such a thing. Doggers says it is new to them as well, but they must take it seriously. Suddenly, Cross comments that since they will be facing a large number of enemies, he and Yui will have a hard time because physical attackers aren't good at handling mobs. Yui agrees, saying that Silica will need to carry the team this time because she can cast wide area spells. But even Silica feels uneasy since those wide-range spells consume a huge amount of mana. Yui then asks Lloyd whether he can use attack magic, and he replies that he can cast basic spells, though the results aren't very impressive. Doggers then proceeds to the formation strategy, explaining that he and Yui will gather all the monsters in one spot so Silica can hit them all at once. Cross will guard Silica and Lloyd, who will focus on healing and support. After that, everyone heads toward the inn to rest, but Lloyd starts walking in a different direction. Doggers stops him to ask where he is going, and Lloyd nervously explains that he is too broke to pay for a room at the inn. Doggers immediately hands him a pouch containing more money than Lloyd has ever seen in his entire life. Lloyd panics and tells him he can't accept it, but Doggers says it isn't charity because the amount will be deducted from Lloyd's salary. With no room to refuse, Lloyd thanks him and promises to work hard to repay the money. The next morning, everyone gathers in front of the inn, with Yui being the last to arrive. She asks where everyone's bags are, and they eagerly tell her that Lloyd stored all their belongings inside his magic storage, so none of them have to carry anything. Yui immediately takes advantage of that and hands over her items, which Lloyd quickly stores as well. Yui and Silica start admiring his incredible skill, but Lloyd says he can teach all of them how to use it. Everyone is shocked because they have never seen anyone besides Lloyd who can use such magic. But he reassures them that it is quite easy to learn, although increasing the storage capacity requires some effort. With that, they depart on their mission. On the road, Lloyd discovers how important it is to enjoy yourself during long quests. They arrive at their first campsite much earlier than planned since they didn't need to haul any luggage. There, Lloyd takes their things out of magic storage so they can set up their tents. Yui wants to go play in the river now that the tents are up, but Doggers scolds her, reminding her that they still need to gather firewood and food. Lloyd volunteers to get the firewood, and Yui thanks him for making their workload lighter. She then drags Silica along with her so they can take a bath, while Lloyd heads into the forest to collect dry sticks. He then notices some fruit he used to eat during his childhood and decides to pick a handful for the others. Suddenly, he hears Yui scream. He immediately rushes toward the sound and sees a giant serpent monster attacking Yui and Silica, who are completely defenseless. Lloyd dashes forward to help, striking the monster to draw its attention. Using the opening, Yui and Silica run back to the shore, and Lloyd waits until they cover themselves with towels before tossing their weapons back to them. He then instantly casts 2 enchantment spells on them, and Yui launches herself at the monster, slicing it cleanly in half with one blow. But even the severed head keeps fighting, so Silica tells Yui and Lloyd to step back before she fires a fireball at it, finishing it in one hit. She is stunned because she normally doesn't have that kind of firepower, but she doesn't realize Lloyd buffed her earlier. Meanwhile, Yui thanks him for saving them and tells him to place her sword back into storage when suddenly her towel falls, revealing everything she meant to hide. Both of them panic, and Lloyd gets slapped even though it wasn't his fault. When they return to the campsite, Lloyd decides to teach everyone how to use storage magic. He tells them to open a space using their palms at first, but they can't figure out how. On Silica's suggestion, they give it a try, but they look like idiots squeezing a non-existent balloon. Lloyd feels like a terrible teacher because he can't make them understand. But then Silica suddenly chants storage, successfully opening a magic space. Everyone realizes that they can't cast spells without incantations like Lloyd can, but as long as they use chants, they should be able to learn eventually. After some practice, Silica manages to store her staff inside the magic space, but the rest struggle to succeed. Later at night, while the others are asleep, Lloyd and Yui keep watch. Yui sits down in front of him and thanks him for joining their party, and he replies that he was unemployed anyway, so he should be the one thanking her. He then remembers how determined she was to complete the quest because their clients needed help and asks whether she has a special reason for being so committed to this quest. Yui explains that when she was young, her village was attacked by monsters and she was the only survivor. So when she heard about the quest, she couldn't stop herself from accepting it because she wanted to save people from the same fate she once experienced. Suddenly, Lloyd interrupts her, telling her to stay quiet because monsters are nearby. Yui becomes alert and summons her sword while Lloyd tells her to wake everyone up. Soon, the entire party is ready to face the spider monsters, but they quickly realize the enemy numbers are far too large, so they should retreat. They slowly start moving back, but unfortunately Yui steps on a twig, and the sound alerts the monsters. Everyone sprints as fast as possible, but the spiders catch up and surround them. They begin shooting webs from their backsides, and the group blocks the first volley, but then one spider snatches Silica's staff with its silk. The spiders then trap everyone inside a cage of webs, and panic spreads through the group. Lloyd says they must stop the spiders where they are before they attempt to defeat them. He quickly buffs his teammates and tells Yui to attack first. She leaps upward, slicing through the web, and retrieves Silica's staff for her. Meanwhile, Yui rushes at another spider, blocks its sticky spray, and swiftly cuts off its legs. Then she rides on the spider's silk discharge to quickly reach a second one, chopping off its legs as well. Next, Lloyd tells Silica and Cross to join the offense. Silica forms several fireballs, and Cross fires arrows through them, setting the spiders ablaze with the burning arrows. The fight ends there, and Lloyd realizes he began shouting commands even though he is the newest member of the team. He apologizes for getting ahead of himself, but Doggis says it was actually good because Lloyd naturally has the qualities of a leader. Everyone agrees with him and encourages Lloyd to continue taking an active role in leading the group during battles. The next morning, everyone has learned the storage magic well enough to carry their own belongings. As they continue their journey, Lloyd keeps wondering why the spider monsters were there in the first place. A few days later, while Lloyd is keeping watch alone at night, he thinks again about the spider monsters. He believes they should have investigated them more closely when suddenly Yui and Silica call out his name, asking whether he intends to stand guard alone again tonight. Lloyd confirms it, and the girls grow worried because he has been staying up all night for a while now. They tell him he should rotate night duty with the others, but Lloyd insists he is fine and wants everyone else to conserve their energy in case they need to fight. Yui is about to lecture him, but Silica stops her, telling her to respect Lloyd's choice, though she also asks him to tell them if things become too much for him. Meanwhile, Cross and Doggis watch from their tent, concerned by Lloyd's stubborn behavior. The next day, they continue their journey. And when they take a break, Lloyd tries detecting whether any monsters are near them. He relaxes when he senses nothing unusual. But then Yui runs up to him, asking what he is doing. He explains the detection spell he uses to locate nearby monsters and other dangers. Yui is surprised, as this is the first time she has ever heard of such a spell. Lloyd tells her that the spell doesn't cover a very large area, but it is still useful enough. Yui becomes worried because he is taking on all the responsibility of watching their surroundings by himself, yet he insists that he is fine and doesn't need anyone's assistance. That night, while Lloyd keeps watch alone once again, Yui comments that it feels like he doesn't trust them at all, even though they have become friends. Silica tells her that everyone has a different pace when it comes to feeling comfortable with others, and there is probably some trauma in Lloyd's past that keeps him distant. She also believes that there must be a reason Lloyd can't see how amazing he really is, and that is why he keeps trying to make up for it by overworking. Hearing this makes Yui curious about Lloyd's past, but Silica assures her that he will open up once he feels secure with them. Meanwhile, Doggis approaches Lloyd and asks him to come along because he needs help, while Cross volunteers to take over the watch for a while. Lloyd follows Doggers, who sets up a detailed trap alarm meant to alert them if monsters come near the campsite. Lloyd is impressed, and Doggers explains that since the alarm can warn them, Lloyd should go get some rest. Lloyd responds that there's no need because he can do a better job than any alarm. But suddenly, Doggers confronts him, demanding to know whether he doesn't trust the party. Lloyd insists that he does, but Doggers points out that his actions say the opposite. Lloyd recalls the words of Merlin and his previous employer, both of whom told him he was inexperienced and useless. He admits to Doggers that if he doesn't work hard enough, he might cause trouble for others, but Doggers confidently tells him that if that happens, Lloyd should just trouble them. Confused, Lloyd asks what he means, and Doggers explains that they formed a party precisely to deal with things together that they couldn't handle alone, and besides, everyone causes trouble at some point. He tells Lloyd to rely more on them, and this is the first time Lloyd has ever heard such an idea. Doggers successfully convinces him to rest, and inside the tent Lloyd smiles to himself, realizing that he now has people he can depend on. The next morning, he tries applying this new idea and nervously asks Yui to help him fetch water, and she happily agrees. Elsewhere, a noble named Michelle receives a report from a shady black mage, who informs him that he has planted magic stones in all the designated locations. Michelle is satisfied, believing their plan will now succeed easily. The mage adds that their previous schemes have scattered the high-ranking adventurer parties, preventing them from interfering. However, the hero's party is still active and might get in their way. Michelle responds that nothing can be done about that since the hero's party only moves under direct orders from the king, but he is confident that the hero alone cannot stop what is about to unfold. Back in the forest, Lloyd and his party find it strange that no monsters are appearing near them. Lloyd decides to extend the range of his detection spell and discovers a group of monsters 10 kilometers ahead. Cross comments that this is quite close to the farms they're heading toward. But before Lloyd can explain more, Yui jumps in, asking whether he can really scan an area within a 10 kilometers radius. He confirms, and she becomes furious because he told her earlier that his range wasn't that large. Lloyd insists that 10 kilometers is not that big, and Yui starts yelling at him. The others tell her to focus on the bigger issue right now. They rush toward the monster's location and find that the creatures have already reached the farmland they were meant to protect. They are shocked at the enormous horde of wolf monsters, but Lloyd is even more troubled because this is the only area where he could detect monsters. He wonders where all the others have gone, and the rest of the party agrees that it's unusual, as monsters rarely abandon their territory. While everyone is confused, Cross notices something strange in the middle of the wolf pack. The others can't see it because their eyesight isn't as sharp. So Lloyd uses a spell to grant himself telescopic vision. With that, he spots a strange black stone among the wolves. He then casts the same spell on the others so they can see it too. Doggers comments that it resembles a magistone, and Silica notes that the black aura surrounding it looks ominous. Lloyd says it must be releasing mana. Then he realizes that the mana feels similar to that of beastfolk. He remembers Merlin telling him once that beastfolk have a special ability that lets them control monsters, and the magistone seems to function the same way. Lloyd immediately uses his detection spell again and notices another massive group of monsters heading toward them. He now understands that the magistone is responsible for everything, though he still doesn't know why. The party members think they should retreat, but Yui refuses, saying that abandoning the area will let the monsters destroy the fields. Doggers agrees that escaping won't be easy for them in this situation. But Silica believes they can't win this battle. Suddenly, Lloyd declares that they must fight, and he is confident they can win if they follow his plan. He states that the magistone must be destroyed first and asks Cross whether he can shoot it. Cross is unsure he can break it from this distance, but Lloyd tells him it's fine as long as he hits it. Cross takes aim, and Lloyd casts 3 enchantment spells on him. Thanks to these enchantments, the arrow shatters the magistone. Cross asks how he managed that, and Lloyd explains that he enchanted Cross, his bow, and the arrows, claiming this is normal for someone like him. But everyone else is stunned because ordinary white mages cannot enchant people and weapons simultaneously. Immediately after that, they notice that the wolves are fighting one another. The destruction of the magistone has restored their natural aggression. Lloyd had anticipated this and remarks that the first phase of his plan is successful. Unfortunately, the second monster horde is still approaching. Soon the monsters emerge from the forest, and Silica steps forward alone to confront them. As the creatures charge dangerously close, Lloyd waits for the final moment before giving her the signal to attack. She instantly unleashes a fire tornado that obliterates all the monsters heading her way. Everyone is astonished, having never witnessed such power from her before. Lloyd tells Silica to continue blasting the monsters with wind and fire magic. Then he turns to Cross. Because the fire has created thick smoke, the flying monsters are blinded, but this also obscures them from view. Lloyd first links his senses to Cross using telepathy and then transmits the monsters' locations using his detection ability. Once Cross can perceive their positions, he shoots every flying monster without missing a single target. Lloyd then rushes back to Silica for the final phase of their plan, but she informs him that her mana is completely depleted. Lloyd solves this instantly by acting as a walking mana battery and transferring his own mana to her. He collapses from giving her too much energy too quickly, but he tells Silica not to worry about him and to cast a spell to make it rain. Silica follows his instruction, and the downpour quickly extinguishes the forest fire before it grows out of control. However, she ends up exhausting her mana from that spell as well and collapses, but Doggers catches her before she hits the ground. Yui tells her she did an excellent job and that she and Doggers will take care of the remaining enemies. As they hurry forward to locate the leftover monsters on the battlefield, Silica and Lloyd pause to rest. Suddenly, Lloyd collapses, saying he must work even harder because he shouldn't be feeling worn out from doing something so minor. Shortly afterward, Yui and the others finish off the remaining monsters. But when they return to check on Lloyd, he tells them they must head to the nearby city because his instincts are telling him that this battlefield was just a distraction and the real target is the city of Ishtar. Everyone is puzzled, and Lloyd pulls out a crate of mana potions from his storage space. He drinks one while explaining that their entire mission was a setup to lure high-ranking adventurers away from Ishtar to weaken its defenses. Cross comments that Ishtar still has the Heroes' Party and the Night Order, so taking down its defenses won't be simple. Doggers, however, thinks Lloyd's theory sounds logical. Yui decides that they should return to Ishtar immediately just to be safe, and Lloyd casts a buff on the whole party as he finishes the potion. He then tells Yui they must start right away and begins sprinting toward the city. Everyone is stunned by how fast he moves. But when Yui tries to catch up, she realizes she can also run at a much higher speed now. The rest of the group follows, and they are not surprised when Lloyd explains that he enhanced their speed so they could reach the city quickly. Meanwhile, Michelle is working on documents in his mansion when the demon general Grist suddenly appears, informing him that his army is ready to advance. Michelle is delighted to hear this, and they talk about how easy it was to move an army toward Ishtar undetected thanks to the powers of a beastfolk girl they kidnapped. Michelle says they will continue using her abilities for their advantage in the future, and Grist leaves that matter in his hands. Elsewhere, Lloyd and the others are rushing toward Ishtar and stop momentarily to catch their breath. They are confident they will reach the city soon at this pace, but Silica worries Lloyd may be getting worn out because maintaining enchantment magic is extremely difficult. He replies that it is difficult only for people who aren't used to it. But his teacher forced him to use it so often that he developed the habit of sustaining enchantment spells for long periods. He tells them about the time Merlin threw him into a forest, and since he couldn't defeat any monster, he simply ran away. That forced him to create new and more efficient spells to stay fast. He admits the training was brutal, but since Merlin scolded him constantly for struggling with it, he assumes he was just terrible at it. He believes that this was a standard training style, but Silica and Yui tell him it was anything but normal. Lloyd, being clueless, thinks his training was actually milder than usual and decides he needs to push himself even harder. The girls can't bring themselves to correct him. Then Doggers and the others recover and prepare to continue their journey. Lloyd casts the speed buff on them again and uses his detection magic to make sure there are no monsters nearby. They resume traveling, but Lloyd abruptly stops, causing everyone to crash into him. They ask him what his problem is, and he explains that his detection skill sensed something, but it's neither a person nor a monster. He has a bad feeling about it. So he tells the others to go ahead without him while he investigates the source of the ominous feeling. However, Yui tells him that if it turns out to be something dangerous he can't handle alone, he will need their help, and he agrees. They soon reach a hut, and Lloyd becomes certain he can sense demons inside. The party is startled because demons live beyond the mountains and shouldn't be anywhere near here. Lloyd says demons are forbidden from entering human lands, so they shouldn't be present. But the others remind him that demons have been ignoring net restriction and attacking humans for several years now. They ask why he's acting like he didn't know this, and Lloyd explains that he has no memories of his childhood because he was adopted right after the war ended. Everyone becomes worried that they might have triggered something painful, but Lloyd assures them he's okay. Cross says they should return to the city and report this immediately to the knights. But Lloyd argues they should gather more information first. He feels the same kind of energy from the demons as the one they sensed from the black magistone earlier, and everyone becomes alert upon hearing that. Lloyd says that if the demons really plan to attack Ishtar, then their investigation becomes even more crucial. Yui agrees because if they do nothing, Ishtar could be in danger, and the rest of the party supports her. They get closer to the house but find no one inside. So Lloyd uses his detection magic again and discovers the demons are beneath the ground rather than in the house itself. Dargis says they should search for an entrance, but Lloyd chooses to skip that step. He instructs Silica to use earth magic, but first he buffs everyone. Silica then creates a sand pit in front of them, causing the ceiling of the underground tunnel to collapse onto the demons performing a ritual. The demons scatter to avoid falling debris, and Yui immediately jumps down and grabs one of them by the throat. She demands to know why demons are on this side of the continent when another demon suddenly uses magic to hurl debris at her. Yui blocks it easily, and Cross shoots one demon while another flees. The remaining demons take cover behind rubble, but Silica uses her magic again to turn the rocks into sand, exposing them. They attempt to attack her, but Dargis blocks them, forcing them to flee. One demon escapes the chamber, and when Yui tries to pursue, she finds the door won't open. Two demons attempt to ambush her, but Cross pins their robes to the ground, allowing Yui to defeat them easily. With that, they eliminate 3 demons and then rush to chase the last one, who traps the beast girl in a cocoon and escapes with her. Lloyd and the others reach the surface at that moment, and they decide to pursue him as he runs away. Yui and Cross reach him first and plan to trap him from both sides while Lloyd and the others finish climbing up. Lloyd senses an immense magic presence coming from the cocoon and tells his friends to secure it no matter what. Soon, Yui cuts off the demon's escape route, and he realizes he is surrounded. Lloyd tells him to surrender because they have questions to ask. But the demon chooses to resist. He creates a magic circle to attack, but Lloyd reacts instantly by creating shields in front of his teammates, causing the magic attack to bounce back and hit the demon instead. He is defeated by this, and Lloyd immediately rushes to retrieve the cocoon and free the beast girl trapped inside. They take her back to the cottage, and Lloyd decides to heal her since she is the only one who can provide them with information now that all the demons are dead. Yui and Silica are amazed as his healing spell begins taking effect quickly, and Lloyd tells them he adjusted the spell. This shocks both of them because altering spells is extremely difficult. But Lloyd explains that his teacher often made him help her invent new spells, so this is nothing for him. The girls once again grow curious about his master, and Lloyd simply says she is a complete weirdo. Just then, the beast girl wakes up and Yui immediately gets on top of her, bombarding her with questions. The girl nervously says her name is Clare, but Yui mishears it and just goes with whatever she thinks she heard. Yui then asks why the demons captured her, and Clare hesitates. So Lloyd tells her they are adventurers who rescued her. He then mentions that he heard some beast folk possess magic that can control monsters and asks whether it was her ability that controlled the monsters in the farms they visited. Clare confirms that it was her magic and says the demons forced her to do it. Now that everything is clear, Lloyd and the others conclude that the demons want to send monsters to attack Ishtar because it serves as the gateway to the continent. They decide to return immediately to protect it and bring Clare with them as well. As they pause to rest, Lloyd senses a large number of monsters heading toward the city and an even larger army following behind them. He worries that they cannot fight all of them by themselves. So he chooses to take a bold action. He tells Yui and the others to hurry to the city and warn the knights while he stays behind with Clare, using her power to stop the monsters. Meanwhile, in the city, Lloyd's former party leader, Hero Allen, is troubled by another matter. He still hasn't managed to find a single white mage to take Lloyd's place because he keeps rejecting every applicant the moment he reads their resumes. The girls in his party anxiously explain that even the strongest candidates can only maintain 2 enchantment spells simultaneously, and Alan insults them, calling them a bunch of incompetent morons. The shield user, Reena, suggests that maybe Lloyd was simply exceptional, but Alan ridicules her for thinking something so foolish. Right then, a knight walks into the room and informs Alan that he has an urgent message for him. He reports that the Forest Patrol unit has spotted a huge army of monsters marching toward them, and they desperately need the hero's assistance. Alan and his party are shocked to hear this, yet he decides to accept the request, making the knight extremely relieved. The knight immediately leaves to share the good news with the other knights. But once he is gone, the girls ask Alan whether they can really handle such an enormous monster army without having a white mage. He responds that it is a direct mission from the kingdom, and they should accept it to earn some praise. Beyond that, he wants the world to see that he remains the strongest even without a useless support mage in his party. Meanwhile, Lloyd and Clare arrive at a cliff where they spot another monster horde, one even larger than the group heading toward Ishtar. Lloyd panics, realizing that if this horde merges with the attackers, the city will be completely doomed. He says that they must find a way to defeat them here, and Clare asks if there is any method to stop them without killing them. Lloyd is surprised by her request, but Clare explains that the monsters are innocent beings the demons brainwashed by stealing her abilities. She feels partially responsible for what happened, which is why she doesn't want the monsters harmed. Lloyd realizes that Clare is a genuine animal lover who cares even about monsters, and he promises to look for a method that can stop them with minimal harm. Clare becomes really happy at this, and Lloyd gazes at the horde before asking if she can send them home using her powers. Clare admits she isn't sure she can control all of them, so Lloyd says that he will boost her mana capacity and increase her spell efficiency. Clare decides to try and steps forward. Lloyd prepares to buff her, but she can't cast anything because a dark device hidden in the forest is interfering with her magic. Back in Ishtar, Alan has arrived at the Adventurers Guild and immediately mocks the adventurers present, saying they are far too weak for such a mission. The adventurers take offense, and Alan's girls mention that all A-rank and above parties are out of town. Alan mocks them even more, and one guy moves to fight him. His friend stops him, reminding him that they shouldn't attack the hero, and luckily the guildmaster arrives before things escalate. He states that they are gathered to fight monsters, not each other, and Alan scoffs as he stands up to reveal his plan. He declares that their mages will open the battle by firing their strongest spells to kill as many monsters as possible. After that, he will lead the knights and other fighters to hold off the monsters while the mages recharge their mana. Alan believes that with his brilliant strategy, a bunch of monsters will be no issue. But several adventurers wonder if he was dropped on his head as a baby. Alan notices their dissatisfaction and demands to know if they have something to say. A mage nervously replies that they don't have the power to wipe out a group of monsters in one blast, and the others agree, saying even killing one monster is extremely challenging. Alan yells at them, insisting that this is the bare minimum they should be capable of. But then the mage from his own party confesses that she also isn't confident. She explains that her spell output has been weakening lately and that she can no longer unleash powerful attacks like before. Alan screams at her, asking why she hid this from him, and the girl admits that she isn't the only one. Everyone in the party has felt their performance decline ever since Lloyd was kicked out. Alan explodes when he hears this, accusing them of betraying him by staying silent. Reena tells him they didn't betray him at all, he simply never noticed because he became complacent after being appointed a hero. She says that he hasn't trained even a little, which makes it embarrassing that he didn't realize his own strength had dropped. The crowd gasps upon learning Alan hasn't been practicing, and he calls Reena a traitor for exposing him. He tries to punch her, but she effortlessly blocks his attack, humiliating him even more in front of everyone. He runs off in embarrassment, and his girls follow him, though Reena stays behind. The adventurers start panicking because they can't possibly defeat the monsters when the hero is this weak. But Reena tells them to calm down because she will take command. She announces that she is leaving Alan's party since he is no longer worthy of being called a hero, and she will fight alongside them instead. Everyone feels relieved, and Reena says that their best hope of survival is to find the white mage named Lloyd. Meanwhile, Lloyd and Clare discover a black magistone, the source blocking her spells. Lloyd tells her that they found another magistone at a different place earlier, and this is what has been controlling the monsters. He says they need to destroy it, and Clare explains that there must be several magistones nearby because the horde is far too large to be commanded by only one. Lloyd asks if she can sense the magistones, and she says she can only feel them when they are close. That is good enough for Lloyd, and he uses his search magic combined with his sense-sharing spell to locate the other magistones quickly. Clare hasn't even fully processed what he said when he suddenly casts an invisibility spell on both of them so they can move closer to the magistone without being detected. Clare begins to suspect that Lloyd's abilities are unusual, but she follows him to the magistone and uses her power to neutralize it. As soon as she does, the monsters are released from its influence and disperse. At the city border, the adventurers and knights prepare to confront the monsters. But the knight captain is uneasy about their strategy. The guild master, however, chooses to trust Reena's judgment and puts his faith in Lloyd. Earlier, when Reena explained to the adventurers that Lloyd was actually the hidden MVP of the hero's party despite being a white mage, many of them didn't believe her, but the guildmaster did. He informed Reena that they likely wouldn't get Lloyd's help because he was currently out of the city on a quest and expected to return in a week. Reena was shocked, but she quickly calculated that Lloyd could shorten the travel time and asked everyone to place their lives on the hope that he would return in time. Since they already made that decision, the guildmaster sees no reason to panic. At that moment, the monster horde reaches them, and Reena orders the archers and mages to begin their attack. Their strikes weaken the monster formation, and when the creatures fall into the trenches, powerful water currents sweep them away, buying more time for Lloyd and his group to arrive. Night soon falls, and Yui's team takes a brief rest as they hurry toward Ishtar to assist Lloyd. Meanwhile, Lloyd and Clare also locate the final magistone and neutralize it. They are relieved that all the monsters are free, but right after that, the panthers and wolves start fighting each other. In the chaos, they knock over the magistone, which crashes into Clare and cancels her invisibility. The monsters immediately turn toward her, and she panics, but Lloyd sprints to the opposite side and shoots some fireworks to divert their attention. On the other side, Reena and the other defenders continue holding off the monsters when their right wing collapses under the brutal assault. What makes the situation even worse is that additional monsters are now moving toward them. And just when everyone is about to lose all hope, a powerful fire spell wipes out the monsters. The defenders cheer as they spot Yui and her S-rank party entering the battlefield, since this means Lloyd must be close as well. Meanwhile, Lloyd is playing tag with two separate groups of monsters trying to capture him. He keeps dodging their attacks and sprinting around, but soon realizes that his stamina won't last forever. Clare also notices that he is only evading and not striking back at the monsters, and she assumes it is because she asked him not to harm them. Wanting to help him as he begins to get overwhelmed, she suddenly starts singing. The monsters instantly cease their aggression upon hearing her voice and calmly retreat into the forest, leaving Lloyd thoroughly impressed. He asks Clare how she managed to influence the monsters, and she explains that her ability doesn't actually control them, it simply transmits her emotions to them, and she asks them to return home. Lloyd thanks her for saving his life and says they should head back to Ishtar, or Yui's party has restored hope among the defenders. However, even with their support, the monsters soon overpower the humans. Reena is injured during the battle, and not long after, the monsters completely break through the defensive formation. Everyone begins to despair, but at that moment they hear Clare's gentle singing, now amplified at full volume thanks to Lloyd's support magic. Her magic instantly calms the monsters, and they peacefully head home without attacking any humans or any other monsters. The defenders are stunned, and Lloyd tells Clare that her incredible magic saved countless lives. Still, the battle is not finished yet, because a group of giant rock golems is now advancing toward the city, and Lloyd resolves to stop them no matter what. But this is where the video comes to an end. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.